Hello and welcome to the 3D Blu-ray Bunker. This is a place for us die-hard fans of 3D where I look exclusively at 3D Blu-rays, not to do a movie review but to focus almost entirely on the film's 3D, with just a short word at the end about the film itself. And this time I'm looking at James Cameron's 2012 3D conversion re-release of his 1997 film Titanic. I think this was the first of the legacy post-conversions, and if 3D had become as big as many of the stereo dreamers hoped it would during the post-Avatar gold rush, then I think this could have become more of an industry. As it is, only a very small handful of other films ever got the treatment. I guess the cost and likely return just didn't make it economically viable. The aspect ratio here is worth a quick mention, because if you saw the 2D version at the cinema, you'd have seen it in 2.39 to 1, like this. But here, Cameron has done what he did with the Avatar 3D Blu-ray release and changed that to 1.78 to 1. Now, personally, I think that 2.39 to 1 is a more cinematic ratio, and 1.78 to 1, being a TV standard, is consequently less epic. But this is obviously good news for those who prefer not to have black bars at the top and bottom of their screen, although it's not how the 2D film was originally intended to be seen. Because Cameron uses Super 35 rather than anamorphic lenses, what you get here is open matte, so has more information at the top and bottom rather than having the left and right sides of the frame chopped off. However, I believe it was primarily composed to be seen in 2.39 to 1, and it's the wider version that won an Oscar for Russell Carpenter's cinematography. I always think that this is a bit of a half-assed way of making a film, because at least one, but probably both, versions are going to be something of a compositional compromise. Also, in doing this, it meant that the conversion team had about an extra 25% of film to convert. Anyway, these comparisons show what I mean about the top and bottom being opened up, and for the most part, as with Avatar, I don't think the composition suffers too much as a result of this. Sometimes it maybe even benefits from it. Other times, though, it looks to me like there's too much unnecessary space in the reformatted version that spoils the originally intended framing. It's unlikely to get in the way of anyone's enjoyment, though, and there aren't going to be any examples of the opened up version giving you more useful picture information that reveals anything previously hidden. Although, as I say, I do think that sometimes in 1.78 to 1, Cameron's opened up canvas gives him more empty space on his hands. Also, it looks like the original image cropping to the film's correct ratio of 2.39 to 1 was mostly achieved by an even crop at the top and bottom of the frame, so this is great news for those who use a 2.35 to 1 fixed frame screen, as you can use your projector's masking to do the crop and watch it in 3D in its originally intended shape. For those who watch on a TV or standard projection screen and don't like black bars at the top and bottom, then it's also great, as that's what you're getting here. The only people who might feel like they're losing out are those who watch it on a 16:9 screen but would prefer the originally intended aspect ratio, so those people are out of luck, unfortunately. And it's good to see that the 2D Blu-ray packaged along with the 3D version here maintains its 2.39 to 1 ratio, and for me that's definitely my preferred shape for this film, as I think this way it has much more scope. But I'll stick with Cameron's reformatted version here. Ultimately, I suspect most people either prefer it this way or they just don't care. Anyway, I'd say that the style of 3D here is not dissimilar to how he used it in Avatar. That's to say, it's very natural, it's not concerned with popping things out of the screen, and it's not interested in very strong 3D or hyperstereo. The big difference with Avatar, though, is that it was conceived to be made in 3D, whereas Titanic obviously wasn't. I don't normally like 3D films using 2D sequences, but here I do like the way the brief opening sepia shots are left flat, which helps to sell the idea that this is stock footage of the ship. The opening exploration of the wreck immediately shows how the film is more effective in 3D. I think they call these things rusticles, and they make for a nice 3D shot, as does the view into the covered deck area here, where the depth gives a bit more life to the shot. And they maybe got a bit lucky with all the stuff floating around here, because it looks great in 3D, and I would imagine that it was pretty tricky to convert. And I love the view as the remote explorer makes its way deeper into the shaft here. The 3D is doing what it's great at when it comes to giving a sense of scale. One of the well-known views of the wreck is the, I think, captain's bathtub, which weirdly looks like there's no water in it at the bottom of the ocean, and it somehow looks emptier still in 3D. And I think one of the wreck's famous images, this doll's face, is made more powerful by the solidity that the 3D gives it, especially in the way the light and shadows work in 3D space as the camera moves moves past it. So these are all quite powerful and haunting images, and the emotional response to them I think is significantly enhanced by seeing them in 3D. It's during the opening exploration that we see something I always enjoy seeing, and that's a piece of 3D equipment being used in a 3D film. So here's old Beardy with his stereo viewer, and we can see the rover's 3D cameras. At least I assume that's what these are, although they look like they've got a fairly wide interaxial. Anyway, we get his point of view shot, so that's sensibly put into 3D as it should be. But then we also see a TV screen, which clearly shows that it's just the view from one of the cameras. But this has been put into 3D too for some reason, which is the kind of thing that I'd have expected Cameron to get right. I love character introductions that use strong 3D, and again, presumably it's just lucky that our first view of young Rose as she steps out of the car is this top-down view, so naturally strong in 3D, and then the shot progresses to reveal her vast hat, which is now very three-dimensional. So I think the hat looks fantastic here, but there's maybe some 3D misdirection going on because her face doesn't have a great deal of depth to it, and in a contrast of hats, Billy Zane's bowler has nothing much to do in 3D space, so he looks a little flat here, and some might argue that that's a reference to him being a two-dimensional character, but across the board in the film, most faces rarely have much depth to them. Stereo D, who did the bulk of this conversion, weren't maybe on the top of their game when it came to making solid faces when this work was done, and they've subsequently done much better work in that area. So really, every face is very mild in the depth given to it, and I suppose that means they avoid making any of them look weird, but they're never as fully sculpted as the best conversions achieve. I think the only face in the film that I'd make an exception for here is Gloria Stewart's, where there is quite a bit of depth in her face, and maybe they put some extra effort into this to show off the depth and detail of character and life that her face is full of, which is obviously a key part of the story. I love the bit where she's looking in the mirror that she'd had when she was on the ship, and she says, "The reflections changed a bit." It was always a sweet and funny line, and I really like the way it's now given a little bit of extra meaning with her 3D reflection set deep within the mirror. I've always thought there's something slightly magical about mirrors, that alternate worldview they give you, and it's the same thing with seeing them in 3D when they're done well, which they are here, and I really like this view. There are some problems with reflections though, like the reflection of the ship here isn't placed into the correct space. The reflected funnels really look like they're painted onto the surface, so on the same plane as the water, which stretches back into the screen towards the ship. It's not terrible, but it's one of those shots that just sort of feels wrong. The worst of the reflection issues, though, happens at a moment that's an otherwise great bit of minor 3D. It's Jack's point of view shot as he enters the first-class area of the ship, so a significant moment in the film, and the depth beyond the doors into this new world is nice and effective. The problem, though, is that you can see a reflection of the camera operator, and maybe digital technology wasn't up to removing this reflection in 1997, but by 2012 I'd have thought that would have been easy, and since they left it in, I'm slightly surprised that Cameron didn't change the reflection to show him holding a Cameron Pace 3D camera rig. I think the 3D does a good job of helping give a sense of scale to spaces, so the steerage compartment here feels a little more cramped thanks to 3D, and the first class area feels even bigger. I really like the way the ceiling here stretches back, and the same feeling of enhanced scale works even better in the engine room, where this machinery space feels absolutely huge, and the boiler room looks like it goes deep into the screen and into the ship. Like Avatar, Cameron clearly likes to keep his 3D natural, so long shots are often as good as flat. Thankfully though, unlike Avatar, there aren't all that many exterior shots, just the big old ship. Sometimes the plane of the surface makes some use of the 3D as it stretches back into the screen towards the ship, and these are maybe examples where the open matte frame is a good thing, as it gives the 3D more to do than it otherwise would, but maybe more often the ship just sits flat in the distance. I guess he wanted to avoid the possibility of a hyperstereo shot making the ship look small, which could make it look like a model, which would be annoying after he went to the trouble of building something like a 90% scale replica of the thing. There was one shot during the sinking, sorry if that's a spoiler, where I thought it looked a tiny bit hyper, but this was the only time. There are times when the 3D is powerful at dramatic moments, like Rose on the ship's stern, where these shots looking down on her are great in 3D, with the distance down to the ocean looking all the more alarming thanks to the stereo. Same goes for those views of people jumping and the shots of Jack and Rose on the stern when it's right up out of the water. So this looks pretty good, although in a similar view with nothing in the foreground it's less effective, with the 3D here being very mild, although it's probably still natural and human vision accurate. And seeing people behind bars should always make for a nice 3D shot. Here, the bars in front of them are sitting in 3D space like a death sentence, so this is very effective. There's a scene when Rose is talking to Thomas Andrews, and because the camera's looking up at them, the 3D feels stronger, which is quite powerful, as this is a pretty dramatic moment too. And I love the shot of Captain Smith all alone on the bridge, with the 3D space emphasising his position as he takes the decision to go down with his ship. There's some good stuff with things that I think are hard to convert, like the silt kicked up by the propellers here is well done, and the smoke they run through here looks pretty good. And there's a great bit with dripping water and sparks where everything looks solid and separate in 3D space. Something that 3D tends to work well with is anything hanging in the air, so the lifeboats are obviously an example of that, especially with all of those ropes, and we see them in a few nice top-down views where the 3D helps to show how high up and precarious these things are. I also like the view of the Renault being carried onto the ship at the beginning. There's nothing strong or particularly special about the 3D here, but seeing it put into its own 3D space does help to make the vehicle more prominent, and it works a bit better as a piece of foreshadowing as it plays an important part later in the film. I mentioned those long shots of the ship not having anything in the way of depth, and I did notice one or two that were totally flat and placed at screen level, which was a bit odd. And there's a bit when Jack's drawing where there was a shot of him that was strangely in 2D, and a view of Molly Brown in her lifeboat is flat too. I never really understand how these things slip through, and I can't imagine that any of these 2D shots were artistic choices. Some of the other minor pieces of 3D work very nicely, like the depth in the diamond is noticeable and quite good. And it's really effective how they place some paintings underwater, the same with the drawing of Rose, and I think they do the same sort of trick that was done with some of the water in Jurassic Park and just put some random bits into the foreground, but it works, so I'm not complaining. So anyone looking for some fun, negative parallax moments will probably feel a bit let down, as there's very little of that. The odd bit of water here and there splashes out, and the film's great symbolic necklace pops out of the screen as it falls towards us. But what you might class as fun 3D isn't in abundance here. There's quite a fun bit where Billy Zane fires off his gun, and an extremely long jet of water squirts back up at him. And all of those ship's passageways are great in 3D, stretching a good way back into the screen. There's a load of these views, and often at dramatic times. So like when Jack's locked away with no one near to help him, we get a view of a passageway where the 3D does an excellent job of emphasising its length and how far he is from anyone. So I think I summarised the 3D here at the beginning, saying it was quite natural looking, not flashy, it's not strong, and in a film that wasn't made for 3D. Some of the examples of the latter are moments like when Jack takes Rose's hand in their first scene together. This is a pivotal dramatic moment, but the 3D has nothing to do here, and I'm sure Cameron would have shot it differently if he'd been making the film in 3D. And the fairly devastating shot of everyone in the water, I think, would have worked better at a shallower angle, which would have allowed for a load of depth. As it is here, again, there's nothing for the 3D to do. And more than those, the film's most famous image of all, one of cinema's great iconic moments, and the 3D does very little to enhance this scene, as there was nothing for it to do, nothing much in the way of a background or anything along the Z-axis. It's a shame, and again, if he'd been making the film stereoscopically, I'm sure Cameron would have set this up very differently to be a stunning piece of 3D. And that's something I think he did brilliantly in Avatar, using 3D most effectively at the most important moments. So just a very quick word about the film itself. I'm entirely unashamed to say I love this film. It's an incredible piece of old school filmmaking with a gigantic set and engaging romance set against a historical backdrop of epic tragedy, and I think the chemistry between DiCaprio and Winslet is superb. Billy Zane's pantomime villain hits the perfect note, and he's got several very funny lines. Victor Garber plays Thomas Andrews with dignity and compassion, and the whole cast seems to nail the tone and and really deliver the goods. On the technical side, Cameron's attention to detail is legendary, and the recreation of the ship is utterly believable. And the framing device of Old Rose works superbly, with a fantastic turn from Gloria Stewart, and when she goes off in the way Jack told us she would, the reunion scene, sentimental though it may be, has me in tears every time, which is quite a rare thing for me. I think it manages to say some relevant things about class and gender inequality, and I absolutely love the passage from Revelation that the priest is reading when he hits the line, "For the former world has passed away," as in many ways the film is about the end of the old world. Obviously anything this popular gets a backlash, and even before that there were those who happily dismissed it as rubbish. For me though, it definitely deserved all the commercial and awards success that it got, and I do find it a major loss to cinema that in the now 23 years since it was released, James Cameron has only given us one further film. Still, at least that was in 3D. So I hope you found this in some way useful, and if so, I hope you'll join me again soon for another 3D Blu-ray review. Until then, thanks for looking in on this one, cheers for now, bye bye.